Okay, let's talk about properties of equality. Okay, so these have an equal sign in them or an equation instead of just the number values. Okay, so the first one we're going to talk about is the reflexive property. Reflexive property of equality. Okay, and the reflexive property says that any quantity is equal to itself. Okay, and I'll go through some examples of this, of each one of these in a minute. Okay, and then the second one we have is the symmetric property. Symmetric property. Okay, this one says that if one quantity is equal to a second quantity, then the second quantity is equal to the first. Okay, pretty basic idea, nothing too fancy there. It's kind of stating something pretty obvious. Okay, the third property the third property is the transitive property. This one says that if one quantity is equal to a second quantity, and the second quantity is equal to a third quantity, then the first quantity is equal to the third quantity. Okay, that one's probably a little bit more tough than the other ones have been so far. Try to size this up here. Really ran off the board. There we go. That's closer. Oh, still a little big. Okay. And our third our fourth and final one is the substitution property of equality, and that says that a quantity may be substituted for its equal in any expression. Okay, so those are the four properties of equality in words, and now let's look at a couple examples to go along with those. So the reflexive property, any quantity is equal to itself. Okay, if we use that in variables, we could say that B is equal to B. Okay, we could say it in numbers. 7 is always equal to 7. Or we could also say something like 3 plus 4 is always equal to 3 plus 4. Pretty basic. Okay. The transitive property, slide some of these around a little bit, give us some more space. Or sorry, the symmetric property next says that one quantity is equal to the second quantity, then the second quantity is equal to the first. This one's also very basic. Okay, it says in variables, it would say if A is equal to B, then B must also be equal to A. Okay. Pretty basic, good idea. Okay, so this one's much harder to write in numbers, but with variables, okay, that makes sense. If our first variable is equal to our second variable, then our second variable has to be equal to our first variable because they are equal to each other. It just says that an equal sign is a two-way street. Okay. Transitive property. Okay, this one is one that comes in very handy, especially in geometry later on. It's not called transitive in geometry, but it gets used, the same principle is used in geometry quite a bit. Okay, so with transitive property, a first variable would be equal to a second, and that same second variable is equal to a third. So if A is equal to B and B is equal to C, then we know.
Can I back to me or no? Not now?
Then we know that
I'll wait, I don't understand. I'll
A
come
is
back.
equal to C.
I'll come back.
Okay, sorry for the interruption. And the last one, substitution, is pretty nice as well. Okay. This one says that you can take any quantity, any two quantities that are equal, and put one in for the other in an expression. So if you say that A is equal to 7, and then over here you also have an expression that says 3 plus A equals B, then you can take the A, which is supposed to be 7, and put the 7 in where the A is in the other equation. So I'm going to take this 7 and replace that A with it. So 3 plus 7 is equal to B, and that helps me evaluate what B's value is, which we know that it'll end up being 10. Okay? So the substitution takes place right here. Okay? I replace that A with a 7 because it said A is the same quantity as 7, so we can do the replacement with the substitution property of equality.